The mystical truths in religions East and West are brought to light again and made relevant for our time by Elizabeth Clare Prophet, world-renowned author and spiritual teacher.
Would you tell us what you mean when you talk about the coming revolution?
Doug, the coming revolution is a revolution in higher consciousness. But it really is a revolution that will affect every part of our lives. Because at its core is the unlocking of the energy of God that is the spark of life within the heart. It's the threefold flame of the real self. And when the individual makes contact with that real self, it's like the bursting of a fountain of light and of an energy coil that envelops the entire being and becomes a spiral of a higher self-awareness. And through this higher self-awareness, we then can and join forces for a revolution, which is really to be a turning around of our way of life on earth. Civilization today, even in America, is in a downward spiral of moral decay, degeneration, a lessening of self-worth and the worth of life, which we see evidenced in liberalization of abortion laws and in controversy over euthanasia. The idea that human life is no longer as valuable as it was and as it was esteemed in our early history. This is because we have not yet discovered that our life is God, that God is life within us. And it's because we have projected our awareness of God outside of ourselves and accepted the condemnation that we are sinners, that there comes this lessening of individual self-worth, hence a movement toward socialism, a mass consciousness, a welfare system where the individual gets lower and lower and lower until we are all finally reduced to the lowest common denominator of the human consciousness, which is the level of the animal. And we are told we are animals instead of sons and daughters of God made in his image and likeness.
How widespread do you think this revolution is going to be?
I think that the spark of this revolution, once it ignites, our consciousness is going to leap city to city around the earth, because I believe that everyone is just on the verge of contacting that inner light and that inner self. And contact with that inner self is what made Jesus the world figure that he was and is. That same contact gave for Gautama Buddha a following, a religion, an enlightenment, and energy is the key. An energy that enabled him to have, to this present day, millions and millions of followers. All of the great lights of history, whether they have been scientists, artists, statesmen, doctors, and so forth, when they have had this essential key of reverence for life, such as Albert Schweitzer or Mohandas Gandhi, when they have discovered that life as the spark within instead of something removed, that is when they have become effective on the world scene. And this is why the movement, which we call the movement for the coming revolution, is something that is so explosive. It is not explosive in the outer revolutionary sense. It is an inner revolution. But the inner revolution cannot help but change our entire way of life on earth because it liberates that soul force. And this is why we're having a conference on soul liberation. And the key at that conference is the ascended master, Saint Germain, the master of freedom and of the Aquarian age.
Now, what does Saint Germain have in mind for this conference?
The point of his coming is initiation. And this gets into a very interesting subject. What is initiation? Initiation means that you, as a disciple of Jesus Christ, of Gautama Buddha, or of any of the ascended masters, desire to come up higher in your state of consciousness. You desire to understand more of God and to be more of God within your heart and mind and soul. It takes an ascended master to convey that light, to convey an increment of energy, an increment of the mind of God, to give you that expanded self-awareness. This is the meaning of the term initiation. The guru-chela, or master-disciple relationship, has been going on for thousands of years. It is the means of the transfer of God's energy, which someone, namely the guru or the teacher, has concentrated within his being because he has contacted the inner self. as he has a greater concentration or a reservoir or a resource of that energy than ordinary people, he becomes the point in hierarchy who is called the guru, who can make the transfer to those seeking that same attainment and that same contact. So Saint Germain is one such ascended master. He has been serving the flame of freedom as he has embodied upon this planet for at least 100,000 years. He finally made his ascension after his incarnation as Francis Bacon in 1685 and has been serving as the master, the ascended master of the seventh ray. Particularly in this century, he's come forward to release his teaching on the I Am Presence and the violet flame. And so at our fall conference on soul liberation, the Master Saint Germain is coming to contact personally his chelas. Now that coming is not a physical coming, although some see him. It is the coming of the Master in his finer bodies, as we call them. His presence is felt, his light is felt, his energy is transferred. Those who have made the step to concentrate a greater manifestation of light within their chakras or centers do see the ascended masters standing on the platform and surrounding the auditorium. Others do not see, but they feel. Others do not feel, but they hear the word and they gain a new understanding, so that all who come are at different levels of awareness, hence different levels of initiation.
Now, what does this have to do with the coming revolution?
Saint Germain is the one who sponsored America, and he sponsors freedom in every nation today. He has taught us that those whom he calls the spoilers, or the fallen ones, have invaded every area of life in our civilization. They have interfered with the economic policies of the nations, with politics, with education, with religion, and they have taken from the people their just and rightful inheritance of the abundance of God's grace and his gifts and even material supply. Therefore, Saint Germain comes to teach us the science of the spoken word. He comes to assist us in unlocking our own energy source, which is God, so that we can right these wrongs not by violent revolution, but by the revolution that comes through the flow of cosmic consciousness, of tides of light from the central sun, of energies that are the alchemy, a literal alchemy for the transformation not only of the individual soul, but of society as a whole.
What is your personal contact with the Master Saint Germain?
Saint Germain is the master who sponsored me in this life, whose picture, which I saw when I was 18, reminded me of my inner vow to him which I made before coming into embodiment. I recall standing before him and making my vow to him that I would take up that torch of freedom and serve him. And so, a few years after I saw his picture, he contacted me through the Ascended Master El Moria, saw to it that I was trained as a messenger, and today he is releasing his teachings through me, and these can be had by our listeners in Pearls of Wisdom. These pearls of wisdom contain the basic teachings of the Master Saint Germain as he has given them over the past 50 years. And they are vital messages for all who cherish freedom as an inner flame as well as a way of life in America, for which this nation was founded and which ought to be the motivating light of all our decisions, public and private.
I think that Saint Germain is probably a very unfamiliar figure to much of our audience. How can they overcome the strangeness of dealing with someone they've never met before?
You know, Saint Germain is Uncle Sam. And I think Uncle Sam is more than a picture on a billboard, more than an advertisement to join the armed forces. When we think of Uncle Sam, we think of someone who is kind of the spirit of America. And that is indeed who Saint Germain is. He is the very person, the very essence of our culture and of all that we stand for, not in the sense that we are exclusive, but in the sense that we have a gift, a great gift from Almighty God, which is ours to give to all of the nations of the earth. Saint Germain teaches us what that gift is and how we can implement it and how we can take that gift as a precious energy as well as an understanding and save that freedom which we have been given and save this nation for another round of opportunity, because America was founded so that those who came here might experience this soul liberation, this reunion with God, which comes as we walk the path of initiation under Saint Germain, the master of the Aquarian age.
Is Saint Germain's message for all Americans or just the few who are into mystical teachings?
Doug, Saint Germain's message to the American people is very basic. It's to every man, woman, and child. Far from being metaphysical speculation or mysticism, it's a practical, down-to-earth, concrete statement of the Master who is truly the Master of the flame of freedom. It is entirely in agreement with the tradition of Jesus Christ. You will recall Saint Germain was embodied as Saint Joseph, who was the protector of Jesus and Mary. Saint Germain, then, is one with Jesus Christ, and there is no conflict from the standpoint of either religion or politics in our finding out more about this wonderful individual, this wonderful person, this pure Son who has individualized the God flame, attained mastery in time and space, and ascended to be one with the immortals. He tells us how to live, how to restore our birthright, how to regain control of our money and our money system, how to work, for instance, in overcoming the problems of taxation and what is happening in the administration today as tax upon tax is leveled upon the American people. He speaks to us of the truth of abortion, the fact that we are killing God or the potential for God within the womb, and therefore creating an enormous karma that is coming upon our nation as a disruption in the weather and plagues foretold in the book of Revelation. He is truly the voice of the seventh angel that comes to warn us of the dangers to our heritage if we do not fulfill our destiny and our calling as we represent the sons and daughters of God and the 12 tribes of Israel.
Thank you very much.
This is a presentation of the Summit Lighthouse, an international spiritual organization dedicated to universal enlightenment. Founded in 1958, the Summit Lighthouse is a beacon of truth to thousands worldwide and a leader in New Thought spirituality.